These Navy SEALs once operated with precision, discipline, and national trust. But behind closed doors, some crossed legal lines that stunned military courts and shocked the public today. We're breaking down 14 cases where elite warriors ended up facing prison terms. Case 1. Dustin Turner, a young Navy SEAL trainee living in Virginia Beach in June 1995, had his life changed in a significant way. He was training, learning, and trying to build his future. But during the night of June 18th to June 19th, something happened that brought a lot of attention to him. That night, he was seen leaving a nightclub with a young woman named Jennifer Evans. Many people saw them walk out together. When Jennifer did not come home, her friends and family became very worried. They called for help, and officers began looking for her right away. As days passed, the search became bigger and more serious. People in the community hoped she would be found safe, but no one knew where she had gone, because Dustin Turner and another SEAL trainee, Billy Joe Brown, were the last people seen with her. Officers focused on them very early in the case. They asked many questions and tried to understand what happened that night. In September 1996, after a long trial, Dustin Turner was found guilty of abduction with intent to defile and murder. He was given a very long sentence of 82 years in prison, which meant he would spend most of his life in custody. Years later, the story changed again when Billy Joe Brown spoke about that night. In 2002, Brown gave a recorded statement saying that he alone caused Jennifer's death. In 2003, he repeated this in a formal written statement. This made many people wonder if Dustin Turner had been punished for something he did not do. Turner's lawyers asked the state of Virginia to look at the case again under a law called a writ of actual innocence. They believed Brown's new confession showed that Turner's part in the events was not what everyone first thought. Courts examined the new information very carefully. They looked at Brown's words, older evidence, and everything that happened the night Jennifer disappeared. In 2009, one court made a ruling that could have helped Turner, but that ruling was later changed. In 2011, the Supreme Court of Virginia gave the final decision. They said the new evidence was not strong enough to change Turner's conviction. Because of this ruling, Turner stayed in state custody with his original 82-year sentence. Turner was recently denied parole in December 2024, despite a new Virginia law making some inmates eligible for consideration. Case 2. Thomas Mixon became known in Austin, Texas, after a series of bank robberies frightened workers across the city. He had once served as a Navy SEAL, completing tough training and important missions. But years later, between December 22, 2017, and February 26, 2018, his life took a very different turn. During that period, 5 banks in Austin were robbed. Workers said they felt scared and unsure of what would happen as a man handed over notes demanding money. Each time, the robber walked out quickly, leaving everyone inside shaken. When officers looked closely at the bank cameras, clothing, timing, and the way the robber entered and left the buildings, the signs began pointing to one person, Thomas Mixon. As officers collected more proof, the case became clearer. They found clothes that looked like what the robber wore. They checked his actions after each robbery and found patterns that matched what happened at the banks. Even though no one was hurt, the fear was strong. One bank was robbed twice, and another bank was robbed twice, leaving workers afraid the robber might return again. On February 26, 2018, after the 5th robbery, officers moved in and arrested Thomas Mixon. Later, in federal court, Mixon agreed that he robbed all 5 banks. This meant there was no long trial. Instead, the court focused on what punishment was fair for someone who once served his country, but later chose actions that frightened so many people. In September 2019, the federal court gave Thomas Mixon a sentence of 97 months in prison, which is a little more than 8 years. The judge explained that even though no one was physically harmed, the crimes caused real fear and broke important laws. The sentence covered all 5 robberies, with each count carrying the same length of time, all to be served at the same time. Case 3. Benjamin B.J. Sifrit was known across the United States in 2002 after a troubling case in Ocean City, Maryland, changed 2 families forever. He had once trained as a Navy SEAL in the late 1990s, learning skills meant for discipline and duty. But on May 25, 2002, his life turned in a very different direction. During the busy Memorial Day weekend, two visitors, Joshua Ford and Martha Jeannie Crutchley, went missing. When officers began searching for them, a small clue pointed toward B.J. Sifrit and his wife, Erica. What started as a simple missing person report soon grew into a case that shocked people across the country. As officers looked deeper, more signs appeared. On May 31, 2002, B.J. and Erica were arrested for breaking into a restaurant. During the arrest, officers checked Erica's purse and found the victim's ID cards. This discovery changed everything. In the days that followed, more searches took place, and remains belonging to the missing couple were found in a landfill in Delaware. Officers then focused on building a timeline of what happened that night in the Sifrit's Ocean City condo. The couple gave different stories, and those mixed statements pushed the officers to keep asking questions and gathering facts. Each new detail added more weight to the case. In 2003, B.J. Sifrit and Erica Sifrit each faced their own trials. B.J.'s trial took place in Rockville, Maryland. The court reviewed hours of statements, items collected from both suspects, and the timeline built by officers. After looking at everything, the court found B.J. guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Martha Crutchley and guilty of assault connected to the events of that night. He was found not guilty of the death of Joshua Ford. In July 2003, he received a 38-year prison sentence, a punishment meant to reflect the harm done and the fear that spread through the community after the couple disappeared. Erica received her own separate sentence in a different court. Before we bring up the next case, if you have found this military crime documentary interesting so far, please consider supporting my channel by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support will mean so much to me. Thank you. Case 4. Tony Didolph, Adam Matthews, and Kevin Maxwell Jr. became known around the world after something very sad happened in June 2017 in Bamako, Mali. All of them were part of special U.S. military teams that worked in faraway places. They trained hard, carried important duties, and were trusted to make careful choices. Logan Melgar, an Army staff sergeant, lived and worked with them. But one night, the three men decided to carry out something they called a prank. They thought it would be a surprising joke, but it turned into a moment that changed many lives. During the act, Logan stopped breathing. When this happened, everything became serious very quickly. People tried to help him, but it was too late. News of his passing spread through the military community, and many families and friends felt deep sadness. As investigators looked into what happened, they slowly understood the steps of that night. The group planned to enter Logan's room without warning. When they did, they held him in a chokehold. Logan became unresponsive, which means he could not move or wake up. Investigators asked questions, collected information, and listened to statements from the men involved. Over time, the truth became clearer. In May 2019, Adam Matthews accepted guilt for his part. The court decided he should spend 1 year in military prison. In June 2019, Kevin Maxwell Jr. also accepted guilt. He admitted to charges such as negligent homicide and giving false statements. His sentence was 4 years in prison. Both men lost their military rank and were removed from the service. The most serious part of the case involved Tony Didolph, the person who put Logan in the chokehold. In January 2021, he accepted guilt to charges that included involuntary manslaughter and obstruction. His first sentence was 10 years in prison. But later, in November 2022, a military appeals court looked at the case again. They found problems with how certain information had been handled during the earlier court process. Because of this, the first sentence was set aside. In June 2024, Tony Didolph returned for a new hearing. This time, the court gave him a much shorter sentence of 18 months, along with a lower rank and a bad conduct discharge from the military. Case 5. Billy Joe Brown. It all began when a young woman named Jennifer Evans went out with friends on the night of June 18, 1995, to a place called the Bayou Lounge. She was happy, enjoying her evening, and planned to return home safely, but she never made it back. When her family realized she was missing, they became worried right away. Officers began searching for her, asking questions and talking to people who had seen her that night. Very soon they learned that Jennifer had last been seen with 2 Navy SEAL trainees, Billy Joe Brown and Dustin Turner. What started as a normal night out suddenly turned into a serious case that scared the entire community. As the days passed, officers kept searching, hoping to find Jennifer alive. But the truth became clear when her body was discovered in a quiet, wooded part of Chesapeake, Virginia. This news brought deep sadness to her family and to many people in the area. When officers studied the clues, they followed the trail that led back to the two men who were with Jennifer before she disappeared. The case then moved into court, where everyone wanted answers about what truly happened that night. During the trial in June 1996, the court listened to long and detailed explanations about the events. Families sat in the courtroom hoping for justice. Witnesses shared what they knew, and the court worked slowly to understand the truth. On June 7, 1996, the judge announced the decision. Billy Joe Brown was found guilty of his part in Jennifer's death. He was given a sentence of 72 years in prison, along with a $63,000 fine. The sentence showed how serious the crime was and how much pain it caused Jennifer's loved ones. Then, in April 2003, something important happened. Billy Joe Brown signed a sworn statement saying he alone caused Jennifer's death. He wrote that he acted by himself and that Dustin Turner did not take part in the killing. Case 6. Nicholas Bickle was a Navy SEAL who went on 2 trips to Iraq. But his life changed in a very serious way when federal agents discovered he was moving weapons and explosives to people who were not allowed to have them. From March 2009 to November 2010, investigators learned that he helped move machine guns, stolen rifles, and even blocks of C4 explosive across different states. The case started in Nevada but soon reached other places, such as San Diego, Las Vegas, and Colorado. What began as quiet suspicions turned into a large investigation as more details came forward. As agents looked closer, they found many things that showed what was happening. They discovered a footlocker with a secret hidden space at the bottom inside it, and in other places, they found boxes of weapons with marks from Iraq, special night vision goggles, and more than 70 guns that were not allowed to be sold or owned without strict approval. Investigators also learned that Nicholas Bickle was not acting alone. He had worked with other people to move and sell these dangerous items. Each new piece of evidence helped agents understand how the weapons traveled from place to place and how many rules had been broken. In October 2011, a jury listened to all the information presented in court. After hearing the full story, they found Nicholas Bickle guilty of several federal crimes. These crimes included planning to sell machine guns and explosives, which are items that must be handled with very strict safety rules. Moving these items without permission can be very unsafe for the public, and that is why the case grew so quickly and became so important. The court explained that these actions put many people at risk even if the danger was not seen right away. On July 17, 2012, a federal judge in Las Vegas decided Bickle's punishment. He was given 17.5 years in prison, along with 3 more years of supervision after he is released. This long sentence showed how serious the crimes were and how important it is to follow safety rules around weapons and explosives. Before we hop on the next case, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate your support in helping my channel grow. Thank you very much. Case 7. Jason Matthew Mullaney once served with SEAL Team 5 in Coronado, California, spending a full decade in the U.S. Navy from 1993 to 2003. After leaving military service, he moved into real estate investing and launched a company in 2008 called Trident Financial Holdings and Acquisitions, LLC. Through this business, he reached out to people he knew from his Navy years. Many trusted him because of their shared background, and he convinced them to invest their savings with promises of high yearly returns, reaching up to 24%. Court records show that at least 11 active and retired SEALs, plus a family friend, placed their confidence in him and believed their funds were being used for legitimate loans. Trouble began when investors started asking for their money back around 2011. According to investigators, only a small portion of the money had been used for the loans Mullaney described. The rest went toward personal spending, including homes, cars, and gambling. By July 2012, state authorities arrested him on more than 30 felony counts, including securities fraud, grand theft, and tax-related offenses. In September 2014, he admitted to 3 counts of grand theft and 1 count of securities fraud. Early in 2015, he attempted to withdraw that admission, but a judge refused the request and allowed the case to move forward toward sentencing. On May 6, 2015, the court ordered Mullaney to serve 6 years and 8 months in state prison. He was also directed to repay nearly $1.2 million to the people who trusted him, many of whom had served beside him in uniform. Case 8. Richard Marcinko was known across the United States because he created a special Navy team in 1980 called SEAL Team 6. Many people saw him as a strong leader who knew how to train brave fighters. But years after his work with the Navy, his life changed in a serious way. In 1990, he was found guilty in federal court for taking part in a plan to cheat the U.S. government during equipment deals. The case was about how certain contracts were handled, and a judge said he broke the law. He was given 21 months in federal prison and a fine of $10,000. Before the court case, Marcinko had spent many years serving in the Navy. He took part in missions in Vietnam and later helped the Navy build new training ideas for special operations. When SEAL Team 6 was created in 1980, he became its first commander. His work helped shape how future Navy teams prepared for difficult missions. Even with this strong record, the situation with government contracts brought heavy attention to his actions. In July 1989, he was indicted on charges that included conspiracy and conflict of interest. On January 24, 1990, a jury found him guilty. Marcinko began serving his prison sentence soon after the court's decision. Reports show that he was released after completing most of his 21-month sentence. Even while in prison, he stayed active by writing and speaking about military topics. In 1992, he published his book Rogue Warrior, where he talked about his life, his work in the Navy, and his time in federal custody. Many readers saw this book as his way of explaining the choices that led him to both success and punishment. Richard Marcinko's story shows two very different sides of one person. He built a famous Navy unit that became an important part of U.S. Special Operations, but he also faced serious consequences when he broke the rules during contract deals. Case 9. Keith E. Barry became known in the Navy SEAL community because he worked closely with SEAL teams as a senior chief petty officer. His job put him around highly trained operators every day, and many sailors expected him to show strong leadership and good judgment. People trusted him because he had spent years helping train and guide those who supported SEAL missions. But in 2014, Barry's life changed in a very serious way. He was accused of raping a woman in San Diego, and the case moved into a military court. After the trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to 3 years in confinement. The news surprised many people in and outside the Navy because they never expected someone in such an important role to be involved in a case like that. As the years passed, lawyers began to look deeper into what had happened during Barry's trial. They found worries that made the situation more complicated. During that time, some very powerful Navy leaders had been giving strong public speeches and interviews about sexual assault cases. These comments were meant to encourage fairness and responsibility, but they also created concern. Some lawyers believed that those statements might have put quiet pressure on the people handling Barry's case. In military law, when leaders create pressure that could affect a trial, it is called unlawful command influence. This is a serious problem because every person on trial must be treated fairly, without anyone feeling pushed toward a certain decision. Because of these concerns, Barry's case did not end with the first trial. Instead, it went through several levels of review. Different groups of judges studied what happened, looked at the leaders' statements, and examined the atmosphere inside the Navy during that time. They wanted to make sure the court did not rush or make choices based on outside pressure. In 2017, the top military appeals court reviewed every detail. After carefully studying the case, the judges decided that Barry's conviction could not be fully trusted. They explained that the earlier trial might not have been completely fair because of the influence created by leadership comments. For this reason, the court threw out the conviction, canceled the 3-year sentence, and ordered that Barry be released. Case 10. Robert Guido Stella, a former Navy SEAL who later faced very serious legal trouble. He was once part of a group in the military that trained very hard and worked on difficult missions. Many people thought of him as someone with strong skills and discipline. But in 2023, his life changed in a big way. A federal jury found him guilty of producing child sexual abuse material after a long investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. This news shocked many people because someone who once served in an elite military group was now connected to a serious crime. The evidence that investigators found on his devices showed actions that broke federal law and caused harm to minors. The facts were clear. and the jury made its decision based on everything investigators discovered. During the investigation, officers gathered many types of digital items. They collected computers, phones, and other devices. On these devices, they found files that connected Stella to the crime. Federal court documents explained that these recordings were not mistakes. They did not happen by chance. They were created on purpose, and they showed minors in situations that were not safe. Investigators worked carefully to recover the files, even when attempts were made to hide them or remove them. Reports from reliable news sources described how this evidence was shown in court, step by step. The jury saw the details and understood what the files proved. This helped them reach the guilty verdict. In February 2024, a federal judge announced Stella's sentence. The judge explained that the crime was very serious and caused harm to young people. Stella received 20 years in federal prison. After finishing his time in prison, he will also have a lifetime period of supervised release. Case 11. Edward Gallagher was a chief petty officer in the Navy SEALs, and his name appeared in major news stories after actions during a 2017 mission in Iraq were questioned. The case focused on what happened near Mosul, where a teenage captive from a militant group was taken into custody. Many people followed the hearings carefully. Reporters shared updates every day. Families of service members watched closely, and the trial became one of the most discussed military cases of that year. Even though the topic was serious, the court had to move slowly and look at every detail to make sure the final decision was fair. During the trial, the court reviewed several charges. One of the most serious accusations claimed that Edward Gallagher caused the death of the teenage captive on May 3, 2017. But an important witness later testified that he, not Gallagher, caused the death. Because of this and other pieces of evidence, the jury found Edward Gallagher not guilty of all the major charges, including murder and attempted murder. The only charge the jury agreed on was that he posed for a photo with the captive's body. This was considered a much smaller offense compared to the others, but it still broke military rules. For that single charge, the court gave him 4 months of confinement and lowered his rank from Chief Petty Officer, E7, to Petty Officer First Class, E6. At the time of sentencing, he had already spent more than 4 months in military confinement while waiting for the trial, so he did not return to custody. After the ruling, the case continued to stay in the news. Many people had strong feelings about it, and leaders in the government also became involved. Later in 2019, President Donald Trump stepped in and ordered that Edward Gallagher should keep his SEAL status for retirement. Case 12. Joel Gingery is a former Navy SEAL who later became a jiu-jitsu instructor in Florida. Many people in his town first knew him as someone who had completed very tough military training. They saw him as a person who had once worked in a special military group and understood discipline and strength. Later, they knew him as the man who taught self-defense to children and adults at his school. Parents trusted him because of his background, and many students liked learning from him. Some children even said he made them feel confident while training. But in 2024, everything changed in a big way. His name appeared in the news for a very serious and upsetting reason, and this shocked many people in the community. A jury in Florida found him guilty of 2 counts of sexual battery involving a young student who trained at his school. News reports explained that the case took place in Volusia County, and the victim was someone who learned directly from him. When people in the community heard this, many felt sad, confused, and worried because they never expected such news about someone they once trusted. As the investigation continued, officers worked carefully to collect all the information they needed. They spoke to people who knew the student, and they looked at medical records. They also read written statements that helped explain what happened. The state attorney's office said that the evidence showed the student was harmed during a meeting connected to training. In court, people talked about how Joel Gingery's past as a military member and his position as a teacher gave him power and control over his students. Because of this, the situation became even more serious. A martial arts news source called BJJEE also reported that the jury found him guilty after listening to the evidence and hearing from witnesses. These details helped the court understand how the events happened and why the case was so important. In June 2024, the judge announced the final sentence. Joel Gingery was given 20 years in state prison. He must also register as a sex offender. Case 13. Stephen Varenko III became known in the Navy SEAL community because his case raised important questions about how people should act and how leaders should behave. Varenko was a Chief Special Warfare Operator, which is a high rank in the Navy. This rank showed that he had many years of service, long training, and a lot of experience. People in this position are usually trusted to guide others, teach younger sailors, and set a good example. Because of this, many people in the Navy knew his name and respected the work he had done. In February 2015, Varenko was on a Navy training assignment in Kentucky. During this trip, something happened at a hotel. A woman later said that Varenko harmed her. When this report was made, officers opened a full investigation. They needed to understand what happened clearly and carefully. Since Varenko worked closely with SEAL teams and held a leadership role, the case received strong attention. People who followed Navy news, especially those connected to special operations, watched the case very closely. They wanted to understand the truth and see how the Navy would handle this situation. When the court-martial began in March 2017, many people took part in the process. Lawyers spoke, witnesses shared what they knew, and judges listened to every detail. The court had to look at each part of the story to make sure the final decision was fair. After reviewing everything, the court reached a mixed outcome. Varenko was acquitted of the rape and kidnapping charges, which meant the court did not find enough proof to say he committed those acts. However, he was found guilty of battery and sexual harassment, which are still serious violations of Navy rules. This showed that the court believed some harmful actions did occur, even if the most serious charges were not confirmed. After the final ruling, Stephen Varenko III was sentenced to 89 days of confinement. The court also decided that he would lose his higher rank and move from E7 to E6. This meant losing a position he had worked many years to earn. Case 14. Gregory Kyle Searden was once a member of SEAL Team 1, which is a special military group that trains very hard and does difficult missions in different parts of the world. For many years, he traveled to places like Iraq and Afghanistan, where he was trusted with important jobs. People believed he could handle big responsibilities because SEALs must be strong, focused, and ready for tough situations. Many people saw him as someone who had worked hard to reach a respected position in the military. But in 2017, his life changed in a very serious way. Officers at a Navy base in Virginia received a report about an assault, and they began looking into it. As part of the investigation, they checked Searden's phone to learn more about what happened. When they looked through the phone, they found something that surprised everyone and started a much bigger investigation. What they discovered showed that Searden had done something extremely harmful. The search revealed that in January 2017, Searden had used his phone to record himself doing harmful acts to a 5-year-old child. This discovery was very serious and turned the case into a major federal crime. In September 2017, Searden went to federal court and accepted guilt for producing child pornography. On February 15, 2018, a judge sentenced him to 27 years in federal prison. After that, he would have 25 years of supervised release. The judge also gave him a $10,000 fine. These details were confirmed by the U.S. Department of Justice and reported by many major news organizations. The case shocked many people because Searden had once been trusted with important military duties, yet he caused terrible harm to a child. While he was serving his federal sentence, another case began in California. Investigators found new evidence showing that Searden had also harmed a young female relative when she was between 5 and 7 years old. Searden admitted guilt again in this case. In July 2019, a California judge sentenced him to 60 years in state prison for 7 felony counts. This new sentence was ordered to begin after he finishes his federal sentence. If you enjoyed watching this military crime documentary, please subscribe to my channel. I will be posting a lot more interesting true crime videos on the channel daily. Thank you for watching.